If an artist says it's art, that's all that matters. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. It's mine. It's mine.
Thank you.
It's satisfying and pleasing to me to have the nocturne shows here, because when I started to do the nighttime paintings, it was the first time in a long time I'd returned to representational painting. Before, I'd been doing a lot of abstract and a lot of like surrealism, dream imagery, pattern, all kinds of different things. So to have those very first paintings, it's a return, it's a circle. When I moved to New York, when I was like in University of Maine in the mid-60s, I was a representational painter, and then I moved to Pratt, and I'm more surprised than anybody, you know, when this happens. So I'd like to, here, first of all, this is the opening. You know, you can tell a good time was had by all. And it was really well attended. It was a lot of fun. My parents were American sergeants who met in Germany after World War II. And this is a picture of my parents in the Bavarian woods in 1947. And there's a good chance that I was conceived within 12 hours of this photograph. As my uncle said last night, your father went to the dance, you went to the dance with your father, but you came home with your mother. So, forgive me, Mom. Go, Dad. There's 4 years later.
We're Army brats. We move constantly. By the time I'm 17, I've lived in 13 different places. This looks like your prototypical American family at the time, with a working father, stay-at-home mother, 2.5 children. But if you look real close,
I refer to this as the perfect family for making an artist. You've got like a very loving, caring mother and a homicidal father, and it tends to create artistic
friction.
And so from this, about 12 years later, here I am ready to go to college. And as I'm going to college, my favorites are Norman Rockwell. Here's the Freedom from Hunger from the Freedom posters. N.C. Wyeth, just a fantastic emotive influence. Then Andrew Wyeth, he's painting up in Maine. These images are in Maine. He's the cat's meow at that point. I'm also influenced. I'm a big cartoon comic book freak. This is Sergeant Rock, drawn by Joe Kubert, who just passed away. Joe also did, well, I never knew him, Mr. Kubert. Also did Batman and Superman and stuff. Just a great artist. Here's another one of Kubert's. A big influence, a guilty pleasure for years. So this, I don't know if you can see it. Another influence is Disney, and these. Can you turn this down to this light here? Another influences are Disney movies, but I'm always attracted to the background imagery. And this is a background from Bambi, what was Bambi, 1938 or 40, something like that. So here, this is a backdrop for Alice in Wonderland. Of course, you know, there's the Madonna of the Renaissance with Da Vinci and Rembrandt. These are big influences when I get to college. Now, when I get to college, I find out about Andy Warhol. Well, no, here we have Claude Monet, and I like him. I like the idea. The colors are nice, but I keep thinking he needs glasses, and I'm not quite understanding what's going on with Impressionism. Also, they're all reproductions. All of my experience with art is reproductions. It's all this size, and if you look at it real close, there's dots in it. Again, here's Cezanne, and I can never figure out what's going on with Cezanne. Everyone said he's wonderful, and I just think he's all over the place. It's flat. It doesn't. I read somewhere that Madame Cezanne told Matisse that she didn't think her husband was a good painter, that he never really finished anything his whole life. All right, so I'm learning here. Later I realized what's going on is if I like something and if I hate something, I'm involved with it. If I don't care, it's dead. But as long as I'm reacting to it, Lord knows what I'm going to do with it or how it's going to influence me. We go from Cezanne to early Picasso Cubism, and still it's flat. I'm thinking, this is interesting. But what I like about Picasso is I hear that he's world famous, and he's got many wives and a lot of beautiful girlfriends. And for a young man, I think that's the life for me. You know. Again, here, you know, Picasso later. This is in the 30s. The one guy I can't stand is Matisse. This is in college. He's just, you got to be kidding me. I said that in Art Appreciation 101, and the teacher yelled at me. But he paints his wife like this. He must not like his wife. And of course, then there's the Jesus Christ of 20th century of modern art, you know, who gave his life for his art, and no matter crazy or not, the paintings are just spectacular, and the emotion and the craftsmanship. Always been a big fan. I moved to New York as a illustration major, and Guernica is in New York. I go visit it often and sit down on the bench and just stare at it. I'm more and more that flatness doesn't bother me. It's the emotion and the way it's moving around. The ladies of d'Avignon or at the MoMA, it's flat, it's chaotic, it's crude, and I can't take my eyes off of it. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Of course, you run into Pollock, you know, Mr. Drip, and I find that there's those I don't like, and then there are those that I just in wonder of. They're colorful, they're bright. A lot of them have a very strong graphic composition, and the more I stare at it, the more I see. His contemporaries, de Kooning, who's taking Cubism and traditional model painting to extremes beyond. And then when he moves out to East Hampton, he does these landscapes which are much more lyrical and easier to take. So I'm looking at Andy Warhol, and this is a silkscreen that I did when I was in college with a pop influence. And another one that I like is Bob Rauschenberg, and this is silkscreen and painting on canvas, and I just love the colors and the way it's moving around. I like silkscreen. I still like silkscreen. So this is a print that I did using a Murbridge photograph of a naked man with a rifle, and I've got splashes of color like de Kooning, and using silkscreen like Rauschenberg, and I'm using color like Warhol. So these are early influences. Here's a detail. And then, I mean, these are the guys. You know, here's John's, triple flag, found objects, flat. Here's Rauschenberg monogram, stuffed goat with a tire around it, flat. He called that base a pasture. Found objects, he's playing with them. One of the things I find out about all these guys, they're influenced by Marcel Duchamp, a famous Dadaist. This is one of his best known, nude descending a staircase. When it was shown in 1913, it was called Explosion in a Shingle Factory. And now this is kind of calm and sedate compared to one of the last pieces he showed, which is called Fountain. And he was invited to be in a group show, and they said there was no jury. And so he submitted that, and they rejected it. And he said it was a good thing because he was never in a group show ever again. And one thing about this that I liked about it is that if an artist says it's art, That's all that matters. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. It's mine. It's mine. And R. Mutt is the manufacturer. That's why he signed it. And this is one of his. This is a little tiny card of the Mona Lisa desecrating, the Madonna of the Renaissance with a little mustache. And the letters down at the bottom, if you pronounce them in French, they say, she's hot to trot. So with these found objects, this kind of flat thing, I'm just a sucker for. This is Rauschenberg. It was a bed. There's a pillow and a cover, and he's painted it and tacked it on. Now, when I'm just about done with school, I get a job at Castelli Gallery on the Upper East Side. And Castelli at the time was like the blue chip. They showed post-abstract expressionists like Rauschenberg and Johnson. They showed Warhol and Oldenburg, and it was like really like the number one modern gallery at the time. And I went there for a part-time job, and I got a job in the graphics department as a gopher making $45 a week. Well, the first week I'm there, Mrs. Castelli asked me over to the apartment to rehang the art in her apartment because they've just finished repainting it. So when I walk into this small 2-bedroom apartment on 5th Avenue, Rauschenberg's bed, that's at the Museum of Modern Art now. Jasper John's target with body parts. These are leaning against the wall. This is in Museum of Modern Art now. Jasper John's large American flag is over the fireplace. I hang that. I don't know where that one is now. That just sold for $50 million, and so it's probably not in a museum yet. Roy Lichtenstein's portrait of George Washington, one of the first pop paintings. This is in the foyer when you walk in. So I call this my master's program. This was there also. This is Persimmon by Rauschenberg. It features a Rubens nude and silk screen with painting and silk screen, photo silk screen. This is big. This is about 6 feet by 4 feet. So for the next 5 years, I'm working at Castelli, and I'm hanging shows, and I'm getting to meet all these guys. It's Warhol, Jim Rosenquist. This is F111. It's 86 feet long. Here's Oldenburg. That's a fountain. This is Dan Flavin. He made fluorescent light fixtures out of just regular fixtures. This is a favorite artist of mine, Bruce Nauman, and this is a neon that he showed in a street window, a window on the street. It's called "The True Artist Helps the World by Revealing Mystic Truths." Now, is he being sarcastic or true? Who knows? But I'm really taken in by the use of words. You could do blue, or you could just write the word blue. If you write the word blue, but you write it in red, the contradictions, more and more, the contradictions are what catch me. Rauschenberg in 1971 is doing wall pieces out of cardboard boxes, and they look like trash, but they're backed by plywood, and they're coated in a polymer, like a matte polymer, so you can wash them with soap and water. They're very stable. So Rauschenberg has become a friend of mine while I'm working at the gallery. He's working in paper. Jasper Johns does these cross-hatching things, and so I go home and take newspaper and weave large mats out of them and then paint cross-hatchings over them. These are like 5 feet by 5 feet. Here's a smaller one. So, I'm just moving through the isms here, and
I worked for Rauschenberg for about a dozen years. I'm his curator, which means I document and care for all of his artwork and install many of his exhibitions.
I do one U.S. retrospective that's 5 cities, which is Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian. Then we did MoMA in New York. We did Albright Knox in Buffalo. We did Chicago Art Institute. We did San Francisco. That was all in 2 years. And then we did a European tour that was 4 cities in Germany, 1 in Denmark, and ended up at the Tate in London. And then I got fired again. I tried to quit, but he fired me. And about 3 or 4 years later, he called me up and he said, I got the world tour together, do you want to do that? And about that time, I just met my girlfriend at the time, Charlene, there in the back. And I said, I don't know if I want to do this world tour. She said, can I come? Can I? I said, I don't know if I'm going. Well, of course you're going, all right? So, and that was Mexico, Chile, Venezuela, China, Tibet, Japan, Cuba. And then I quit. And he went to Berlin and Moscow, and then he hired me back for Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So it was quite a journey. I went around the world 3 or 4 times, and I'm happy for it. But during the time that I knew him and I was working with him, these are some of the works that he's doing. These are solvent transfer. These are prints on paper that are soaked in acetone and then run through a press, and they're on fabric, and you put them against the wall with push pins. All right? Here's one. These are the jammers. The same thing. Beautiful fabrics, but no imagery. He's going back and forth, like really busy, quiet, colorful, pale. This, go to the junkyard, collect a whole bunch of stuff, bolt it, rivet it, glue it, screw it. He does, in his career, he did over 20 dances of backdrops, costumes, and sets. This is a piece he did for Trisha Brown. This is a whole series he did. He went and bought a bunch of junk bicycles and then had neon done all around them. While he's doing all this, I'm doing dream imagery. These are the paintings. This one is called Some Nights Nothing Seemed to Go Right in the Land of the Dead, and is based on, I'm deep into psychotherapy at this time, if you can't tell. Wheel of fire chasing him. There's a whole series of that, and I was collecting old frames that I found and painting them really cheap gold. I wanted them to look fancy or worth more than $120 for the frame alone. Here's another piece that I did based on a dream image called Stable Doors, and they used to call galleries in New York stables, which I always didn't care for. It's like animals or horses or livestock. So this is Stable Doors, and the image in white is based on a Georgianus, Peace and Plenty, I think is the name of it. So you see it. And the brick and the door is based on the last piece that Marcel Duchamp did. It's called Étant Donné. This is down in Philadelphia, and it's a found door and brickwork, and he worked on this in secret for 25 years. He told everyone he was retired, but he was working on this, and the only way you can see what's inside is look through the cracks in the door. The door is locked, so it's a peep show, and for good reason. He worked on this for 20 years. This is a love letter to a girlfriend that got away. This is a portrait of her. It was made in plaster and stretched with pig skin. And 25 years. Nobody knew about it until after he was dead. I work for an art installation company. I spent 2 months installing 500 Japanese woodcuts. It was the largest privately owned collection of Japanese woodcuts. These are Hiroshigas. You can see the influence. I mean, to this day, I love the Japanese, like the diagonals, the lights and the darks. This is Hiroshige. This is very nice. And these people influenced, if you don't know, these influenced the Impressionists very much. All the Monet, Van Gogh was a big fan of the Japanese. I go to Hawaii for 3 months to install bad art in Japanese hotels with 50 other artists. I come back just soaked in tropical, and this is called Made in the Shade, which is like a shade under a tree. This is like from a photo I took in Hawaii. This one's called For Love of Charlene. At the time, money was tight, and when I finished a painting, I would just start painting over it again. And Charlene saw that, and she really liked this one, and so I gave it to her so I wouldn't paint over it. I come back to Matisse. He has a big show in New York, and he just drives me crazy, and I can't get my mind off of it. I go to the show in New York a couple times. I even follow it. I fly down to DC when it goes down there, and look at it again. This is like a late Matisse when he's very ill, and he's doing paper cutouts. And he cuts these out and glues them together. This is an earlier one, the Red Studio. Again, that whole flat thing. They're realistic, but the space is just, to me, it's very charged. Your eye goes back and forth, jumps back and forth. It's just, and the whole idea to do paintings of your paintings is just a great idea. This is one of the last ones that he did. And he would paint the paper, he would cut it out, put it on the end of a stick with a piece of tape, and then put it against the wall next to his bed. And he would compose the whole thing on the wall next to his bed, and his assistant, who was this beautiful, tall Japanese woman, would photograph it, and they would take it down and then glue it on canvas, and that's how they were done. This is Matisse. So Matisse is doing this, and Warhol's doing this, and I'm doing this. This is 19 Real Bad Mothers. And my Aunt Marilyn's here. I tried to get her to stand in front of that for a picture, and she said, "No way in hell." But the basis of this was I was talking with someone, and they were telling me how horrible their childhood was, and it was in complete opposition to what I thought about their parents when I met them, because they were so funny and personable and caring, you know. And so it was how someone could say something about someone and change your idea about them without even knowing them or meeting them. So this was called 19 Real Bad Mothers. I came up with 20 titles and did 20 paintings. These are large. They're about 5 by 7 feet. And I did 20 people who share a common secret. I did 12 men who like children. That got a lot of response. And I kept saying, what about Boy Scout counselors? Okay, all right. This here I'm back and forth. This started out as a Hawaiian fog scene, and ends up with these people on the top, on the bottom. This is called 8 people who are close to the edge, and this one is 6 by 10 feet. So the people go away. This one's called Subdivision. Charlene and I have bought a house. I start dreaming about floating houses, collapsing houses, houses on fire, all kinds of stuff. This Subdivision, because I took scrap canvas, I had a pile of it, and I got out Charlene's sewing machine and sewed them all together. You can see, like here, gessoed it and rolled the purple on, then threw water on it and to get that pattern, and then painted the buildings. Here's another one. This one's called Change of Address. And I've got these rubber stamps I had made up, and this one says about an inch and a half high. This says, a house is not a home, a house is not a home, a house is not a home. Here's another one. This is called The House Mover. This one's called The American Dreams. The American Dreams. That's a 1951 Studebaker Champion that I bought from my father 28 years ago. It's for sale. Still have it. Talk to me after the talk, okay? All right. So the images go away, and I'm still pushing paint around with my hands, and I've got the rubber stamp. I'm talking to someone on the phone one day, and they say, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know what I'm doing." So I went out and got a rubber stamp that said, "I don't know." So I did a whole series. So when they called and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know." And that's whatever. This one's big too. This is like 8 by 9 feet. The stamps go away, and I start working on these, and they just kind of come by accident. They're flat on some sawhorses. They're really tight. I've mixed the paint like ink. I'm wearing the very thin like ink, and I've got these big rubber gloves on, and I'm moving them around, and as I stop, each time I stop, you get that little line. And these have words in them, but you can't read it, you know, because it's so abstract. These, I try to think of several different titles for them, and of course they have to be called hand jobs, and that's what they are. And one of the things about these is when I'm using the words, and I've realized that I have to tell people what the words are before they can see them. And that's bothered me for a long time in art is that every art's got to have a theory or rules or come from a school or an ism. And I think part of it is like I came to New York to be an illustrator. And illustrator, you're always doing something, people tell you what to do, and you're going to sell a product or it's got to have a purpose to it. And here I'm feeling the same way. What is my theory? How do I explain this? And all I kept coming up with, aren't they pretty? And now that's enough. But then I was having a hard time. I also found myself here's the triptych. This is about 4 feet by 12 feet. And I had a hard time with these because I kept making the same kind of marks. I was doing stuff like with the lights out, my eyes closed, do my left hand, use my right hand, stuff like this, and it was difficult. And while I'm doing these, someone gave me these large stretchers that were 8 feet by 4 feet. And I did a couple of these kind of things with them. And one night, I'm out at the house in Long Island that we got 91 or so, and it's a winter's night, it's a full moon, I'm out in the backyard standing in the snow, got a glass of wine in my hand, and I'm looking up through the pine trees, and there's a full moon, and the shadows are dancing over the snow, and a bright white, and it's the closest thing I've ever had to an epiphany. It just, everything I was looking for was there. All I had to do was look and copy. Of course, it's changed since then. I mean, that was the idea, but it just seemed so simple. There was beauty, there was abstraction, and there was representational, all wrapped up in one, and all I had to do was paint it. And I looked at it and said, okay, how do I do this? So it took about 3 months to come up with this. This one is 8 by 5 feet, and that's the first one. It's called Dark Wood. And but while I'm doing it, I'm going, oh, you can do all the seasons, you can do all times of day, you can do all weather, you can do up close or far away. You know, it was exciting, if you can't tell. This one's called Rhyme Time. You can see the Japanese influence in here. This is based on a photograph coming down Whiting's Hill on the way to Dedham. There's that swamp that was down there, and it was all that, it was a rhyme, you know, like a hoarfrost. Pulled over, took a photograph. Bob's your uncle. This is called Cold Front. So now I'm coming out of the nighttime and I'm doing more daytime stuff. These are the trees behind the house out on Bald Mountain Road up in Maine. This is looking over my studio out in East Hampton. This is called Betwixt and Between. This one's about 7 by 9 feet. And I'm really teaching myself how to paint. The earlier ones were very kind of monolithic, very simple, strong, and I'm just, the more I look, the more I see. A lot of these nighttime things, when I first went out, I would just sit, turn out the lights in the house and just look. First it's black, and then it's kind of dark blue, and then you look for a while and it's really brown, then it's green, and you look off to one, and then you're getting colors in your peripheral vision that have nothing to do with the colors you're seeing straight ahead. And even on moonless nights, you can see, but it'll take you 30, 40 minutes to see. And it was quite it was an eye-opener. And ha ha ha. But I'll tell you, what's ironic about all of these is I would not have got to this point if I hadn't spent so much time looking in the dark. Here's one, this is called Storm Warning, Japanese influence. And the colors are what were there. There's like that kind of dark purple with a thunderstorm coming. This one's called Hotspot. This one's 5 feet by 3.5 feet. Very abstract, very representational, fall colors. People will look at it and goes, well, those aren't birch leaves. And I said, I know, they're globs of color. It's not my concern about accuracy, maybe with the color, maybe with the feel, but it's hard enough to get that thing done without worrying about if it looks like a birch leaf. This one was done in protest of the 9/11 attack. I decided I was going to do the largest painting I've ever done, just to prove it, and I could do it. And this one is a diptych. It's 8 feet high and 16 feet long. And this is an example of that, just staring at nighttime, just staring and staring. The more, I've been doing the representational paintings now for almost 18 years. And they changed. When I first saw them, I just painted what I saw. And then I would kind of crop the photograph that I was working with. Now I find that when I'm working, the colors are becoming more and more arbitrary. The other morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, I look out the bedroom window out in the country, and the woods are dark, it's a full moon, it's overcast, so the whole sky is like bright, light gray pink. You can't see the moon, but there's a bright area right in the middle, and there's an orange corona and a pink, bright pink corona going around it. And I'm thinking, no one will believe that. But it's there, you know, and you don't need an imagination. Maybe that's why I like these. On my 55th birthday, I decided to do 55 drawings in search of a painting. I did the 55 drawings. I traded a painting for the folding frame. I silver leafed this side and painted the night scene on here. This is called tavoletta, which is based on a Renaissance paintings that were painted on both sides. And they used to show it to condemned prisoners. They would have the ecstasy of, you know, going to heaven and stuff, so they'd feel better about being garroted or hung. So this is called tavoletta. It has a nighttime, and then I gold leafed and did a summer scene on the other side. It's 7 feet high and 9 feet long. This one is in the show. This is a light touch. I'm doing these winter scenes, and people are saying, well, do you know Rockwell Kent? And I go, no, but I go look, here's Rockwell Kent. And they say, do you know Neil Welliver? And I go, no, but there's Neil Welliver. I start looking, I'm seeing there's kindred spirits. I mean, not only the Hudson River people who are like Bierstadt here, but he's the head of painting at Yale, and he's doing these. I mean,
He was my teacher, Charlie.
He was?
He was my teacher.
Oh, I've got stories. Let's talk. This is Lois Dodd, who lives in Maine and paints in Maine and also in New York City, and a plein air, paints outside. Just a wonderful painter. I'm a big fan of hers. She's about 85 now, and paints outside even at nighttime with a little flashlight. Here's another one of hers. These are small. For the most part, they're like, I don't know, 12 by 18 big, if that would be big. The one guy I find who's like I'm still enthralled with is Charles Birchfield. And Birchfield had a 50-plus year career in upstate New York near Buffalo. These are watercolors, large watercolors. They're like 4 feet high, maybe 3 feet wide. Raises 5 kids, very kind of quiet, calm guy. Here's another one. I want to be Charles Birchfield when I grow up. I mean, just a fantastic artist. And I find out, when I first see him, I think I've found an unknown master. Turns out he was good friends with Edward Hopper, and they corresponded and used to hang out together. They knew each other for years. Here's another Edward Hopper, like a nice landscape. This is Borderline. This is like the backyard of the house out in East Hampton. I do out in the show the books that are laid out in the vitrines. Those are all based on this image. This is a diptych. It's 3 feet by 14 feet, and I do drawings and books and watercolors and prints for about 5 years, and then I finally said, well, it's time to get off, do it. So I do this. It's acrylic background. I lay it out in acrylic, and then I paint all oil. Here's a close-up of the left panel. This takes 4 months once I get down to it. Here's the right panel. Here's the sister piece, which is 4 feet by 14 feet, and this one's called Shortcut. And it's a diptych as well. For those of you who don't know, it means 2 pieces. And then here's Mr. Bierstadt. We're in his room here. I've always been suspicious of clouds and misty days and soulful moons and all that fog and stuff, and I keep saying I don't like it. Remember what I said about contradiction? If you don't like it, be careful what's going to happen. So I'm looking at Bierstadt's, I'm looking at church. This is a view of Olana. You know about this one. Yeah. Do you know this painting?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a tiny, yeah, it's a little sketch. But Bob worked there. I mean, that was Bob's office, right?
It was my office.
Right there.
Actually, my office was in the tower.
In the tower? Yeah, okay. That's Bob there, you can see. Okay. So, I mean, I'm looking at all this beautiful cloud work. Turner, you know, there's a big Turner show and all of this. And I start photographing from the bus. That's a nice painting on its own. We'll get back to that. Here's another photograph. There's the painting. This is in the show. They start out small. I do little 8x10s of these. I like the idea of like a vast expanse on a tiny little surface. It's like scale and size, playing with that. This one is 3 feet by, 6 feet? No, 5 feet. This one's called Mood Swing. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Here's another one that's out there. This is Cloud Dancer. And I just get caught up in the whole of taking this ephemeral, constantly changing, almost nothing phenomena and freezing it just for its abstract qualities. And I do 6 of these large ones in a period of about 6 months, and then I stop doing them. They come and they go. One night, I'm with my brother-in-law Jim, who's over here, and we're in Maine. We're on the camp on the pond. We're drinking quite a bit of beer, and Jim says, "Look at that moon! Get your camera." And I said, "Come on!" We go stumbling down the hill. We spent about almost an hour out there photographing like crazy. There's the photo on the left. There's the painting. These are small. These are like 8x10. Here's the photo. I find these ornate frames at my framers, and they're gold leaf. I paint them flat black and slap them on, and this is my Goth series. One of them is called What is Goth Rot? And I like the idea of again, those like ornate gold frames that I was using years ago. It just adds something to it. It's silly. It's ridiculous. It's perfect. Here's another one. This is called Across the Way. There's the photo, and there's the goth one. I spent a week on an island off the coast of Maine. The island's owned by the Fairfield Porter family, who is a really well-known painter and art critic. And we're there to do plein air, and it rains for 7 days. But I get really good at fog and gray, you know. It kind of sharpens my eye. And this one is 4.5 feet by 6.5 feet. It's called Mystified. This is a Fairfield Porter. See any influence? Of course, he was dead. I was influenced by him, not the other way around. Here's one from the island that he did. This is 1963. And this is right from the house I was staying in. So you can see the... at the same time, at the water's edge of my sister's camp up in Maine, I take photographs during a rainstorm, and I'm just fascinated by the overlapping ripples. This is a silk screen that I did, a limited edition. This is a 2-color. It's called Rain Dance. Charlene and I go for a walk in Prospect Park in Brooklyn with a friend of ours for about a 3-hour walk, and in that 3 hours I come up with, this is here to there, this is about 4.5 feet by 6 feet. This is called Reverb, this is 3 feet by 9 feet. This is called Echo, this is about 4 by 6 feet. Not only that, at another place in the park, I come up with current events. and alternating current. These are 3 feet by 6 feet. And so not a bad walk in the park. It takes about 3 years to paint these 6. Plus I'm doing prints and drawings and stuff like this. There's a puddle on the side of the road. This turns into a painting 4 feet by 4 feet. This is called wet work. Again, the overlapping ripples. I do many drawings and paintings of it, but this is a one-color linoleum cut that I did. It's an edition of 14, and it came out pretty good. This is the backyard. This is called Murder Incorporated. A group of crows are called a murder. And this is our backyard at sunrise, and these birds wake us up on a regular basis. This time I was getting tired of these like sweet little titles like, like Rosy Sunrise and, Another Pretty Day and stuff like this. So murder, I call this Procession at first. It took about 5 months. At one point I had 20 birds, another point I had 1 bird. I just kept going back and forth, and finally it broke me and I stopped. So at Murder Incorporated was perfect. Then there was another one. This is right in the backyard. This one's called Another Goddamn Beautiful Sunrise. And this one is a diptych. They're about 6 feet, maybe 7 feet high. The white spot is a blank. And there are 2 canvases, and you can adjust them whichever way you want, either side of a door or a window, one on one wall, one on the other. And it's based on a photo of my sister-in-law's backyard. And here's another one. This is a more recent one. It's called Broken Promises, and they're combining all this stuff that I talked about. Like an atmosphere and the Japanese and the flatness of the Cubist and the artists that came after it, found objects. This is pretty much the way it was. I mean, I didn't have to do much to it. It's 3 feet by 7 feet long. And then I was working on, this is small, this is 7 inches by 14 inches. It's a monotype, it's 2 plates. I painted on it, ran it through the press, and it was an image I was playing with, and I did some watercolors. This is a detail, this is about 16 by 16, and when Cynthia and Bob came down to pick the work out, one of the ones I had was this, which was about 20 by 40, something like that. And they really liked it, and it was nice. And I said, well, would you like a large version of this? I'm going to work on it. And they said, well, how large? And I had the canvas stretched, and it was 3 feet by 7. I just pulled it out. It was all ready to go. And that's the one that's in the show. I painted that one for the show. It's Rhythm and Blues. So that's this one, the Rhythm and Blues. So that's the full circle. And I just end telling you that I'm really concerned about things I hate ending up on canvas. And one thing I've been complaining about a lot recently is portraits of babies and pets. Just drive me crazy. So this makes me nervous. So we'll talk in a couple of months. All right. Okay, so thank you very much. All right.